It happened again. Deja vu. It keeps happening. Nothing changes.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into a live post-game edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. So we'll be here until, maybe they kick me out of the stadium. I don't know, but Penn State loses 30-24 against Oregon in overtime. Drew Allar with a devastating interception. Deja vu all over again because it's the exact same setup as it was the last time they played in a big game. But now 4-21 versus top 10 opponents. This is just the initial reaction. Comments are encouraged, but politely, please, politely. So where do we even begin? I think we got to begin with Drew Allar, and then we'll go to James Franklin. And the offensive line didn't perform well. Hey, Jim Knowles and the defense held up their end of the bargain, right? Let's talk about Drew Allar, though, because once again, the lights were too bright. He folded in the biggest moment. There was, I think there was maybe one play, maybe two, where he actually did more than he was needed to. He went above and beyond, because Dante Moore made every single play that Oregon needed him to, and then some. Drew Allar did none of that. Drew Allar ended up not just not winning them the game, which has happened in times past against Ohio State and Michigan in particular. He did things that didn't get them closer to a win, but he didn't lose them the games, okay? But against Notre Dame now and Oregon, he has cost them the game in these moments. And you could see that, and we'll talk about play calling too, because Andy Kotelnicki, how much responsibility does he bear in this situation? Because that's not a good play call in overtime. I feel like that's a rushed moment to try to get back, because Oregon scored instantaneously in double overtime, and it feels like, hey, you got to respond, but in that moment, you got to be smarter. You got to be a little more understanding of your situation to know that you don't need to. It wasn't double over. It wasn't the 2-point overtime where you have to score, and every other play you got to score, you got to match it. You can still drive the football. So yeah, Andy Kotelnicki certainly didn't call his best game, but at least for me, maybe this is different for some people, I don't think he has any confidence in the passing game, or that Oregon, or that every I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry, trying to do this live here in the stadium. So appreciate everybody joining me here. But I think that Penn State felt like they needed a bang play instantaneously. They weren't going to get it, and they tried to go for the home run. So maybe that's Drew in that moment, because I think the play call that was set up to go get an explosive play when you didn't need it. So Andy Kotelnicki calls it, but then Drew Allar makes a terrible read into triple coverage. Again, you don't need it in that moment. So I was getting off track about the confidence issue. So let me go back to that. Because why is Andy Kotelnicki calling on 3rd down and 8, 3rd down and 9, quarterback option, read option plays? This is your passing quarterback. This isn't Bo Pribula. Maybe it should be, right? I think this conversation gets a lot more difficult, and the people that, maybe aren't saying it for the most analytical reasons, but now the frame's a lot different. Mizzou is winning. Bo Pribula is doing excellent. And Drew Allar, who is a 4th-year quarterback, 3rd-year starter, is regressing? How is he regressing? How is he taking a step backwards? Because he at least showed progress last season, like, hey, okay, he's materializing into a quarterback that can take over potentially in his senior year, right? Then the Notre Dame game happens, and then one after another, and this is just deja vu all over again. So I put this a lot on Drew Allar because he doesn't need to make that throw. It is 1st and 10. The reason, and it's, like I said, the play call, not great, really bad. And then Drew to execute the play. You're a 4th-year veteran. That's triple coverage. It's double coverage. I know what he's trying to do. He explained it. He just said, I tried to float the ball over there. But that's not a high percentage throw. And you say that all the time, that I'll throw an incompletion just to play another down. Where was that in that moment? So the spotlight's too big, too bright for Allar in this moment. And then James Franklin, how much responsibility does he bear? For this game specifically, I'm going to put this more on the quarterback because, like I said, Dante Moore, when they needed him, when Oregon needed him, he stepped up every single time. There were a couple select plays in the fourth quarter where Drew did something, but it was just always, it was never, hey, my offense is struggling, the ground game's struggling, I'm going to give them something. That's what Dante Moore did 100% of the time. 100% of the time. I'm not even exaggerating. Drew, one or two plays, so that's like what, 5-10% maybe at best. So James Franklin, I keep going back and forth here. James Franklin, I mean, they're down 17-3, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, this is a preparation issue. They fought back. Jim Knowles called a heck of a game. This is obviously primarily on the offense. You're down 17-3. This is the whiteout. You had 2 weeks to prepare. So yeah, by proxy, it's still going to be James Franklin's issues mainly. Okay, it's all going to fall back on the head coach. But at the same time, they came back down 17-3. They forced double overtime, and then it came down to a bang-bang play that really shouldn't have happened. It's kind of like the same thing with the Notre Dame loss in the semifinal. I don't know that James Franklin was out-coached or didn't do enough in this moment. Again, by proxy, he's going to have to bear responsibility. But at the end of the day, it's not on him. So I hope that Penn State just doesn't fall apart here, because that very well might be the case. They have Ohio State still, Indiana, 11-1. Is that on the table? 9-3 gets a little more possible, a lot more possible. That's why I talked about this game, because you had 2 weeks to prepare. You had the ample time. You were healthy, right? And this was the high leverage game that you had. You're going on the road to Ohio State. You don't know what the roster is going to look like. Hopefully it's going to be intact by the time you get to Indiana. And again, I don't like to speak that into existence. I don't like to say those kinds of things. But you get what I'm saying. You knew what you had. Everybody's healthy. You had 2 weeks to prepare. You're at home. It's the whiteout game. You don't know your setup for Indiana. You don't know your setup for Ohio State. And now you kind of have to figure it out from there. So we're going to continue with this. I see the live chat is going off as we are here past 1 a.m. Eastern time. So thank you for joining me on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. We'll continue this conversation after the break. And today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What you're going to love most about 5 Hour Energy is how portable they are. The big taste, the tiny shot, you can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. All of your favorite flavors, and if you want to try a different one, you can try them all. Like I said, 17 flavors to try, and it will kick in fast. It's sugar-free, so you don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold and try something new in-store or online at 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com, or over at Amazon today. Okay, let's continue to talk about this one. 30-24, double overtime. The nerves can't take it, can they? Because like I said, it's the same thing over and over again. Penn State has a chance to salvage its season, obviously, with Ohio State, Indiana. 10-2 gets you into the playoff, right? That's the whole point of the 12-team playoff. This is perfect for a James Franklin program. But man, it's kind of a fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Because here we are, we're at that point. I guess, say the adversity that Drew Allar is going to go through in that Notre Dame game, he should be better because of it. No, he's exactly the same. And I don't think Andy Kotelnicki is confident in the passing game. There is a reason he's calling QB read options on third and 10. instead of strategic passing concepts. But I don't get why he's forcing, again, that play in overtime. Let's go to the live chat, see if we can have some other things that people want to hit on. I see we have Ohio State fans in here. Allar has not progressed at all in 3 years. He got better his junior year. Sophomore year, okay, he had the great game against West Virginia. Junior year at least took a step in the right direction, but this might be it. This might be his ceiling, and it's a shame because it's all mental. It is all mental. He has the physical traits. He's everything you could ask for in terms of a raw athlete, but mentally, it's something's not clicking. Everyone kind of points to, okay, James Franklin, Andy Kotelnicki are going to get the first blame here. What about quarterbacks coach Danny O'Brien? I think it's important to just at least bring him into the conversation. What responsibility does he bear? I know they brought Trace McSorley in this season to be an offensive analyst. But I do find it intriguing that the two most important positions in college football right now, quarterbacks coach and wide receivers coach, where would we rank them in the hierarchy of Penn State's coaches with how the importance or the status? The status, I think that's a fair way to put it, in terms of results and pedigree and everything else. For example, Stan Drayton is going to be at the top of that list because of the pedigree that he has and the resume that he comes in with. Danny O'Brien's still fairly new at the most important position in college football. That is a risk having him on staff as it is. I know that we've heard so many positive things, but again, when the results aren't translating, you have to ask these questions. I wouldn't say that Danny O'Brien and Marcus Hagans are at the top of the hierarchy. It's obviously Andy Kotelnicki. When we're talking about the assistant coaches, Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles is number one. Andy Kotelnicki would be second. And then Stan Drayton, Terry Smith, right? Anthony Poindexter, Stan Drayton, Marcus Hagans, Danny O'Brien would be at the bottom of this hypothetical hierarchy. And that's where the lack of results are coming from. The quarterback position and the wide receiver position. So Allar has not progressed in 3 years. Quit with the OC, PSU. Okay, let me make sure I can read here. Quit with the OC for Penn State is great. He is not. Okay, so I shouldn't say that he's great. Change players, bring back players, looks before he even got here. I don't put too much blame on Andy Kotelnicki in this instance. I do think personnel boxed him in because we can't overlook the fact that he was able to have the results that he had with such a limited attack last season. And you lose Tyler Warren, and one player is supposed to make or break. All of a sudden, it was Andy Kotelnicki's a genius. We love Andy Kotelnicki. He's a great offensive coordinator, and then clearly does not have a good day calling plays. But is this all his fault, or does personnel bear some responsibility? We haven't even talked about the offensive line yet. The offensive line had an awful game. I can't believe I said that they were the Joe Moore Award favorites, or they should have been. I'm not afraid to go on the record for that. But it starts up front with the offensive line, and Drew didn't get the time that he needed because the plays materialized. The second there's a defender right in front of Drew, and he's got to get rid of the football or take a sack, and now the plays need that extra 0.5 seconds. I'm looking at the offensive line. I'm like, just give him an extra second. Just give him an extra half second because that play is there. That route is developing. That's why they say it starts up front. Credit to Oregon's defensive line. So it wasn't just the defensive ends. It was Bear Alexander. It was Amari Washington on the interior of the defensive line, where Mateo Uiagalelei and Tatum Tuioti, they had an impact. They were winning reps against Nolan Rucci and Drew Shelton here and there, but I put this on the interior of the offensive line for the biggest problems. The pressure came right up the middle. It was right in front of Drew. So Drew's confidence is already shaky, and then on top of that, the offensive line isn't giving him that break. So it's a failure all across the board. Drew doesn't need to make that throw, which costs them the game at the end of the day. But the reason they have 3 points in the fourth quarter is because the offensive line could not get it together. And again, you can only call so many plays if your offensive line's just not going to block for you. If you're Andy Kotelnicki, so that's why I don't put too much on Kotelnicki as an offensive coordinator in this game against Oregon. I did think Tosh Lupoi called a heck of a game, probably the best game of his life as the Oregon DC. But I don't think you can only, like I said, you can only call so many plays. You can only do so many things as the offensive coordinator when your personnel and your players aren't responding the way they need to. Okay? So, Oregon's defensive line, hats off to them. Absolutely incredible. Like I said, it was the defensive tackles that were my biggest question mark about it. They look better than the two starters from a season ago for Oregon. One of them's a first-round NFL draft pick, and they look better. That three-man rotation, and forgive me because in the moment I'm remembering specifically Amari Washington and Bear Alexander because I see, hey, number one's living in the backfield for them. That's Bear Alexander. Number 52, Amari Washington clogging those A gaps, B gaps right in front of the interior of the offensive line for Penn State. That's a big problem here, is that the offensive line did not do a whole lot until late in the game. And here's something else too with that, just it kind of comes to mind here, which is, like I said, Andy Kotelnicki not calling his best game under the circumstances, but you're also running it at Oregon, and you're finally wearing them down defensively because Oregon controlled the time of possession. They won that battle handedly. You ran the ball so effectively. Why didn't you just run it again? Why didn't you run a jet sweep with Trevor Pena? It was working. Katron Allen was getting his late in the game. Why didn't you do that? So it is a comprehensive effort that I'm going to primarily put on Drew Allar because, like I said, a 5-star passing quarterback. He is not a dual threat, and they're using him as a dual threat. They are turning to his legs. Mike Yurcich, Andy Kotelnicki, what do they default to? We got to run the ball with Drew as a change of pace, as something, just to get something back. It should be behind his arm. It should be behind his quarterback playmaking ability, and it's not. Small mistakes cost us the game. Big mistakes cost them the game because Penn State had plenty of opportunity. This went to double overtime. Let's also not forget that Oregon this is a national title contending team. And I said that. I thought this was a national title contending team. Here's the thing with Oregon. They should be not just a fringe contender. They should be considered a favorite. To come on the road, not have a bye week, to turn around after playing, Power 4 schools and everything else, and then you win like this with the cross-country trip, that's very telling with a team that is mostly new. Coaching staff is consistent, obviously, but new quarterback, new running backs, new offensive line, new wide receivers for freshmen at some of these spots, defensive backs, linebackers, and the tight end, the tight end, Kenyon Sadiq. But other than Kenyon Sadiq, Bryce Betcher, most of this team is, a lot of them are new starters, and for them to have this much success and be this dominant early in the season, they're only going to get better. So Oregon is not some dark horse or some sleeper team down the stretch here. That's a really good football team, and you could make the argument that they should be number one, because they did win this, even though the scoreboard says otherwise, 34-24 in double overtime. I do think they won this one decisively because Penn State's ground game struggled. They did not run the ball effectively like I expected. They, in addition to that, they controlled the time of possession. They forced turnovers where necessary, and I know there was the fumble that got called back. And, when I look at it frame by frame, unfortunately, I got to side with, I don't know that he fumbled it in that situation. But Penn State shouldn't rely on a couple missed holding calls or a turnover that doesn't go their way to win a ball game at home under these circumstances. The whiteout. Give credit when credit is due. Oregon is just better, period. Yes, they were. Rough game in Michigan fan here. Well, thank you for the Ohio State and Michigan tuning in for this one. Loved watching Penn. Coaching needs to change in the situation. It's not like the Harbaugh years where he needed to get over the hump. Top recruits and running backs squandered. That's a very honest take. That is this all going to stay the same? Let's finish up with that. What direction does Penn State go in the season? Can it be salvaged? I think that's an important talking point here because, it's going to feel like Penn State's going to end up, I've already seen it, in the Outback Bowl at 9-3. So let's talk about that more coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Quo, formerly Open Phone, one of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners. In Quo, formerly Open Phone, it's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. So they have this built-in AI agent that's a game changer. It can answer after-hours calls, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. And whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or you're part of a larger team, Quo makes it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. Get started for free and get 20% off. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months over at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That is quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is back, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, you can try player props, and even follow live lines during the game. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And remember, you can bet Penn State football. Yes, you can bet Penn State football. No lines are available just yet for Penn State UCLA. They will be in due time. But if you think Penn State's going to circle the wagons, win the conference, plus 650 according to FanDuel right now as it stands, and plus 800 to win the 2026 CFP Championship. If you like those lines, you can head over to FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And remember, if you are a new customer and you bet just $5, if that first bet wins, you could win $300 in bonus bets. Our one final segment from Beaver Stadium. It's past 1 a.m. Eastern Time. Oregon fans are probably abundant in this chat, and I'm not going to get to every comment, unfortunately. So but like I said, I appreciate the support. I appreciate the spirited banter for the most part, right? I appreciate a lot of the positive, contributions to the conversation in an analytical manner, or just an appreciation for what this was, because this game was a movie for Penn State fans. It was a horror movie, but that's still where things ended up, obviously. So is the season? So let's wrap up with this, because it's the same story all over again. Is the season washed? Is there anything to salvage? Yes, there's absolutely everything to salvage here. The difference, the biggest primary difference between Penn State and Notre Dame and Penn State, Oregon today is that the season is not over. This doesn't knock them out of any sort of contention. Big Ten title obviously gets a little murky. We'll see if Penn State, do they win against an Ohio State, and then they potentially meet Oregon again in the Big Ten championship. Again, that's a lot of big ifs, but you finish 11-1, you have the one conference loss to Oregon, you very well could and should be back in the Big Ten championship game, because you would hold hypothetical tiebreakers over Indiana and Ohio State. Now those games themselves, obviously Penn State is going to be an underdog at Ohio State, as they should be. Ohio State has now beaten Texas. They won very comfortably. I don't want to say comfortably, but they won decisively against Washington. I didn't get to watch that entire game in depth, but to go on the road like that, out to Seattle, that's still a relatively new team, again, between new coordinators, quarterback, running back, offensive line, right, all that stuff, replacing 8 starters on defense. Ohio State, probably, I would say, at least a touchdown favorite when we get to that point. And all things considered, right, we don't know who's going to be healthy, who's not at the end of the day. But Ohio State will be favored and expected to win that game. So they're okay, and that puts Penn State at 2 losses if things kind of go status quo, right? And then it's Indiana. I am worried about Indiana. I will say that game has gone from probably Indiana would be a favorite in most people's minds. If we're just speaking, general consensus, the public, because the public was right about Oregon beating Penn State. All the us experts, right? Myself and a lot of other people in the media thought, Penn State could pull this off because, like I said, they had the setup. But now you look at that Indiana game, the results have to speak for themselves at some point. 63-10 over Illinois is nothing to bat an eye at. That wasn't 35-10. No, that was 63-10. That was a formerly top 10 team against Illinois. And then Illinois is still really good because they just beat USC. Circumstances lined up for them as well. Long story short, Indiana is not, hey, Penn State should be favored by, a touchdown. They should win this one even if it's close. Still trust the Nittany Lions here. I don't know. I don't know at that point. I would have a difficult time picking Penn State. My confidence level for Penn State against Indiana has gone down dramatically. My confidence level in Penn State beating Ohio State, it was cautiously, hey, you have a better setup. You have Jim Knowles on your sideline, right? You have all these things, but that obviously clearly does not matter as much as it should. The fourth-year quarterback, the same system, your running backs, your offensive line, how did they all regress in some sort of manner? So those teams, that's what you have to do. You have to, if you win, you have to go 10-2. That gets you into the playoff, and then who knows? Anything can happen, right? Ohio State went 10-2 last year, didn't go to the Big Ten championship, and they won the CFP title. That would fix everything. I don't think people would be as up in arms right now if Penn State were able to pull that off. And hear listen to me talk about all that. Oh well, Penn State, if they make it to the okay, that's not what I'm trying to imply, or that's not what I'm trying to say here. But that obviously winning cures all. But 10-2 gets you into the postseason. So is this season completely over? No, but it gets a lot more difficult, and that's why I talked about this game being such a high leverage game, because you're not going to get a better setup than this. Penn State fumbled it. Drew Allar, I think, bears a majority of the responsibility here. Offensive line as well. And then goes to coaching. Andy Kotelnicki did not have a good day, did not have a good night. And then James Franklin again, because this is his program. Why is nothing changing? Why does this keep happening again? It's going to be James Franklin's fault. Oregon is just head and shoulders better than Penn State. They're better. I don't know about significantly. Again, this went to double overtime. Oregon made a couple more plays than Penn State did. This wasn't it, and they came back, right? It was 17-3. Oregon, if Oregon had put them away, then yeah, I'd agree with you and just say, oh yeah, Oregon is miles ahead. No, Oregon is better. They're in tier 1. Penn State's still stuck in tier 2. This game could have gone either way. It was a great game. My heart was in my throat beginning to end. Exactly. This game, everybody's nerves. It wasn't just. I think there was the one portion of the game particularly where it was 17-3, and I think you could just kind of feel the defeatism here in the stadium, and then the energy just spiked. I have a lot of cool recordings from the sideline on my phone that they don't hit the same, because Penn State, the energy of the student section, the crowd. It was loud. I'm surprised that this actually did not set an attendance record. It was 15 short. This was number 2 in Beaver Stadium record history. 111,015, if I'm not mistaken here. Like I said, the highs, the lows of it all. I said this would be a memorable game regardless if Oregon or Penn State had won. And it was like I said, it was a movie. It's a cool, awesome action movie for Oregon fans. It is a horror film, as we are just a few days away from October here, so we get a head start on Halloween, right? Oh, Bo Pribula was 26 of 29 tonight for Missouri. I did check in on his box score. He was highly efficient. His legs weren't utilized too much. It looked like he was getting pressured quite a bit. Did have a turnover, but still and that's UMass. That is a UMass team, but still efficient, doing what they asked him to do. Again, in this game, Drew didn't do either. He didn't do the things that Penn State asked him to do, and he didn't do the things that were needed of him in that moment. Zach, Moore didn't look great and make every damn play. Our defense played their hearts out. Yeah, there's kind of a lot of, again, this is just the initial reaction because I didn't even get to the defense in this half hour live, and I'm going to wrap up here briefly. Moore looks like one of the best quarterbacks in college football right now. I would say Fernando Mendoza looks really good, obviously, because of the stats and the way that Indiana blew out Illinois. But if you watch the film, Dante Moore looked phenomenal. Like I said, he didn't just play mistake-free football. That was an elite game. No turnovers, extended plays. Penn State had legitimately no answer for him. Everybody tried to clown me because I said, hey, maybe Penn State should consider spying Dante Moore. I know he's not a dual threat. Oregon fans and Penn State fans said, I don't know that I would do that. You're not a defensive coordinator for a reason. But I was trying to make a point that the dude just can escape the pocket and move with his legs. And how did Oregon, in crunch time, what happened on the play that scored in overtime? Gets away from denied Dennis Sutton, breaks a tackle against Amari Campbell. It was Dante Moore's legs that ended up beating Penn State in those critical plays, which I was trying to point out. I know that he's not a dual threat, but you have to do something. Edge contain, QB spy, and they did. They did QB spy, and it still didn't work. Dante Moore had a hell of a game. That was an awesome game. That is going to be a top 5 game in his college football career for him. GG Penn State. Yeah. Oregon fan here, that was a hell of a game. Yes, it was. I saw that Oregon fans actually stormed the field here, so cool. Great experience for them, I suppose. Oh, Penn State will lose at Iowa and at Ohio State, and will lose at home to Indiana. That's the worst case scenario, I would say. Again, everything. I still think they're better than Iowa. That's just my opinion. I need to do more digging into Iowa, but that's where I would say. That's where I would say it would be. Y'all are acting like it was a bad loss. It was double overtime, 2-touchdown comeback. No, it's a good point. But this is where, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wrap up here. And like I said, I appreciate all the comments. We'll go live again at the next couple of days, tomorrow or today, I guess, because it's Sunday, right? The whole point is that Penn State gets over the 10-2 tier 2 stigma. It hasn't changed. It hasn't happened. The game that Dante Moore had, Drew Allar's at least supposed to have a semblance of it, right? Home stadium, 4th-year quarterback. How many games has he started compared to Dante Moore? And Dante Moore has already massively surpassed him. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that this might seem like an overreaction. You can look at it, hey, it's 30-24. They went to double overtime. But it's obviously not different. They didn't win. If they had won, we would still be critical, but hey, at least Penn State gained some ground. They capitalized on a massive opportunity here, and they didn't. So it's an uphill battle from here. There's still a lot to figure out on offense. Defense has it all figured out. The reason the defense broke at the end of the game, because they were on the football field too much. Jim Knowles' defense couldn't withstand Oregon's attacks for the entire game. Eventually, they were going to bend and break, and they did. And they still made plays. They were on the field a lot, over a half an hour. Sizable advantage in the time of possession battle for Oregon. And Jim Knowles' defense, I'd give them an A-, honestly, because like I said, they missed some plays. Amari Campbell, he's exhausted, doesn't make a play, denied Dennis Sutton, exhausted late in the game, and that's because Penn State's offense didn't do much to help them out, if anything. So that's where we're going to have to wrap it up. I see all the comments, and I wish I could have gotten to everybody, so thank you to each and every one of you for joining me on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. We'll have plenty more because there is stuff to break down. What did the defense do well? What can the offense fix? How do they fix it? Because season's not over. They're still going to play football games. Best case scenario, obviously they win out and surprise some people, but that's going to take a lot of work. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host, as always, here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Thank you. I really appreciate each and every one of you, your comments, liking the show, sharing it with friends and family, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts. We do this daily here, so we have more conversations on the way about Penn State football and all your other favorite Penn State sports teams here on Locked On Nittany Lions.